Hook, what if I told you the biggest obstacle in high-stakes investigations isn't the evidence, but the people who control the conversation around it? Today we unravel a story where a top security chief is blocked from testifying, not by law, but by political power. Stick around to hear how this shapes accountability, power dynamics, and what it means for transparency in South Africa's intelligence ecosystem. I'm your host, and in this video we're not just reporting the news, we're interrogating it. Personally, I think the real drama here is how whistleblowing, oversight, and institutional loyalty collide at the highest levels of government. What makes this really interesting is how a single decision by Ramaphosa and the acting police minister cascades into questions about legality, access to sensitive information, and whether investigations can proceed when key actors are blocked. In my opinion, this isn't just about one inspector general, it's about how democracies enforce accountability when the pipes of power tighten around them. First, the setup: an inspector general of intelligence, Fazel, was slated to testify before an ad hoc parliamentary committee investigating procurement irregularities and alleged criminal links within crime intelligence. But at a housekeeping meeting, the testimony was halted because the president and the acting police minister hadn't given permission. From my perspective, this isn't just a scheduling hiccup. It signals a gatekeeping moment: who gets to speak, what they can disclose, and under what authority those disclosures occur. What many people don't realize is that classification and security clearances don't just gatekeep information, they gatekeep accountability itself. If a high-level official can be kept from speaking, the integrity of the inquiry can be undermined without a single legal objection being filed in court. Second, the legal wrinkle: Fazel argues he's bound not to disclose information, while the presidency contends he must seek clearance and the right to reveal material under the Act. The tension here isn't simply about whether he has clearance, it's about who interprets the law, who bears the risk of releasing sensitive material, and how those interpretations shift when a president is involved. What makes this really interesting is how the decision to defer or block testimony reflects broader constraints on parliamentary oversight, especially for intelligence matters that operate under secrecy. If you take a step back and think about it, we're watching a test case for executive branch deference versus legislative inquiry, with security implications that ripple beyond a single hearing. Third, the alleged procurement scandal. Before Fazel's suspension, the IGI flagged 5 luxury property purchases by crime intelligence totaling over $120 million, sourced from a slush fund and approved by the National Police Chief. This isn't just about bad optics, it's about potential misallocation of public funds, governance gaps, and potential conflicts of interest in how security budgets are spent. A detail I find fascinating is how such investigations can illuminate the invisible economy within intelligence agencies, the money trails, the procurement irregularities, and the kinds of oversight gaps that can persist for years if not challenged by external scrutiny. What this raises is a deeper question: how robust are anti-corruption controls inside agencies that operate in the shadows, and what happens when insiders push back against reform? Fourth, the political context. Masemola and Khumalo emerge as potential allies of Mkhwanatsi, a police commissioner alleging infiltration of criminal networks into law enforcement and politics. The timing here matters: arrests, resignations, and political leverage all intersect with ongoing inquiries. In my view, the pattern suggests that investigations into internal corruption are not just about the facts on a docket, they're entangled with who wields influence, who controls media narratives, and who benefits from keeping a lid on sensitive findings. What this implies is that accountability efforts can become battlegrounds where information warfare, reassurance storytelling, and legal triggers shape the public's understanding of sovereignty and safety. Fifth, the broader trend: across many democracies, the friction between executive authority and independent oversight in intelligence matters is a recurring, high-stakes debate. The Fazel setback mirrors similar episodes where investigators face non-cooperation, procedural roadblocks, or legal gray areas around disclosure. What this really suggests is that reform momentum often stalls not because people disagree on the facts, but because they disagree on authority, access, and the timelines of accountability. A detail I find fascinating is how such frictions can drive reforms in surprising directions, accelerating transparency in some cases while hardening secrecy in others, which, in turn, reshapes public trust in the legitimacy of security institutions. Deeper insight, setbacks like this illuminate a systemic pattern. When independent bodies' access to information is mediated by political concerns, the pace and quality of anti-corruption work can suffer. This could push oversight bodies to seek faster, more forceful legal instruments or to recalibrate how they publish findings to maintain legitimacy. If you zoom out, the key takeaway is that the health of a democracy's security apparatus is not only about the capabilities of its agencies but also about the resilience of its checks and balances under pressure. In my view, this moment is less about a single hearing and more about how the system negotiates transparency and control when power feels threatened. Closing thought, the story isn't over. With Mkwanatsi's testimony and the committee's recommendation process ahead, viewers should watch how Parliament navigates these tensions and what reforms, if any, emerge. A big question for the audience: to what extent should executive branches have a say over when and what is disclosed in intelligence oversight, and where do we draw the line between national security and public accountability? Let me know in the comments. Should Parliament push for stricter, more independent oversight, or should executive clearance remain a gatekeeper despite the risk of hiding uncomfortable truths? If you found this analysis thought-provoking, drop a like, share with a friend who wants to understand how oversight works in practice, and subscribe for more deep dives into the mechanics of power, policy, and public trust.